get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3, dominate.
I do want to get your take on the potential X factors. Let's start with the 49ers on both sides. Who do you think the X factors could be for the 49ers?
Okay. So, I mean, listen, this isn't crazy to say. I'm not going to try to like get cute with it and be like, oh, it's going to be Gray. Gray's going to be the guy. You know, it's the physical players for the 49ers. And I think offensively, that's Deebo Samuel. He's the one that sets the tone for the 49ers. And anytime, I think Deebo Samuel and Ayuk, and Ayuk maybe not from a stats impact, but his blocking is so big in this game. So big. Really, I could just say the wide receiver core because I think his blocking is huge. I think Jennings' blocking is huge. And I think their physicality and willingness to block linebackers even, I think that's the difference between the 49ers and the rest of these guys. They will block you with wide receivers on your linebackers and win. They will win those matchups. George Kittle
win them
will
on those
go
outside
one-on-one.
zones. Yeah.
Right. George Kittle will go one-on-one with Parsons and win that matchup from time to. So it's just different. It's different. And so I think the blocking of the wide receivers can be the X factor. And so that puts all the wide receivers in that category. Now, Deebo is a little bit different. His is from the physicality when he gets the ball. Right. He's going to break tackles. He's going to impose his will. And so when you have that coming from what's supposed to be the finesse group of your offense, you're in for a long game. You're in for a very long game. So offensively, that's where I would go with the X factors.
I think that's actually perfect. The entire wide receiver room. When you look at the statistics, when I was writing some of the articles this week, Dallas actually minimizes the impact to running backs. I think they've given up the fewest touchdowns to running backs all year of any team. I think they've only given up 4. But when you look at receivers, they've given up the most, 22. And that, I mean, when you think about it, who do they have? They have Trayvon Diggs. And at CB2, they have Deron Bland in the slot, a rookie. And at CB2 with Anthony Brown out, who, let's face it, is an average to below average corner, they don't really have too much. They have Israel Mukuamu, like not necessarily a top caliber option at CB2. And Trayvon Diggs himself is known to give up touchdowns. That's one thing that
those safeties are good though. I want to give credit to those safeties. They're good.
Jaron Kearse was a guy who I really wanted for the 49ers last year. Underrated guy. Their safeties are good. But they give the team itself gives up 22 touchdowns to receivers this year, most in the NFL. The 49ers are going to look to target those receivers. We saw an increased usage for Deebo Samuel this past game. 9 touches in terms of 6 catches, 3 rushes, and really a very impactful game overall for Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk, he cooked last year, and just Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't get him the ball. This year, we could see if Brock Purdy can get him the ball instead, because he could line up against Trayvon Diggs, which is a big thing. And so I think that, those guys are going to be important.
Yeah, 100%.
How about defensively? Who do you think?
I think, again, I got to go with the physicality. And the two guys that bring that physicality and set that tone, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga. Those are the ones right there. Both. Well, Greenlaw is a freak athlete. I mean, he's incredible as is, but just his willingness to get dirty and Hufanga's willingness to get dirty and thump you, again, tone setters. It's all about being physical in this game. And so, who are your most physical players? That's them. Those are the guys that will set the tone defensively. And I think, either they cause a separation that ends up in an interception because they just separate the receiver from the ball, or, a receiver alligator arms it, that type of situation, you get an interception. I think those guys have got to set the tone physically. Again, this is a playground fight. You got to be the bullies in this game. You got to remind them why they shut down last year. You got to remind them that they were sore for 2 weeks, and they talked about that last year when they lost to the 49ers. You have to remind them that you are the bully. So be the bully. And the guys that are going to do that are the guys that hit the hardest and fly around with reckless abandon. Hufanga, Greenlaw, those two.
I like it. I like it. I'm going to go with a very obvious one, but I think it's still a vital one. Mine is Nick Bosa, and obviously Nick Bosa, DPOY, he's going to be an X factor every game. But after the match, the game he had last weekend, I do want to see how can he impact the game this time if the Cowboys look to chip, if the Cowboys look to double team. Why? Because I think rushing with 4, rushing with 5 is going to be vital in this game. I don't know if you're going to get help from the linebacker blitzes and from the different utilizations of schemes that D'Amico Ryans likes to use, given how Dak Prescott is effective against them. And so I expect stunts, but I also want to see, can Nick Bosa really beat guys like Tyron Smith? Can he beat Tyler Smith or Jason Peters, whoever starts at left guard? Can he do that himself in these one-on-ones or even one-on-twos to see if the 49ers can get pressure with 4? Because that's where they want Dak Prescott to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And they've got, it's not going to be Tyron Smith or Peters. It's going to be their other Smith, their rookie Smith.
Yeah, Tyler Smith. Yeah.
Tyler Smith. Yeah, yeah. So Tyler Smith is extremely strong, but he's not refined. So I think, the technique of Bosa can cause him some fits.
Yeah, for sure. What about the Cowboys? Do you think that there are any X factors there that could help them sway the game in their favor?
Yeah, I mean, for Pollard. Pollard's a really good player. He probably shouldn't be a Pro Bowler or a CMC, but really good player. And there have been multiple games that I've watched where it's like, man, this guy gets it on a wheel route and he is gone. Like he can break a game open. He is their big playmaker on offense. He's the guy. He's the explosive one. So I think he can be the X factor on offense 100%. I think he's the guy. Defensively, man, I think Curse can be the guy. I mean, we'll see how healthy he is. But if Curse is the one that gets the assignment of Kittle, whoever gets the assignment of Kittle, I think can be an X factor over there. So I would assume that would be Curse. So I would put him defensively as the X factor.
I like both options. I mean, when you talk about Tony Pollard, I think a determining factor for the Cowboys is, can they really develop a running game against the 49ers? Not many teams have done that. And the Seahawks had like an inkling of it with Kenneth Walker. He was there in the first half, and he was able to really operate without a strong offensive line by being patient. But he only had 63 yards and only on 4.2 yards per carry. And the Seahawks, they faded in the second half, especially when they had to revert to a passing attack. The Cowboys need to stay in this game, and I think they do so if they can keep a balanced approach. And that is if they utilize Tony Pollard a lot more. So, one, they've got to get an efficient running game, which Tony Pollard is involved with, but they also got to give more carries to Pollard, who clearly is the more effective running back between the two. I know you and I said it last night, but if they give it to Zeke, it's a win for the defense because of how efficient or inefficient really Zeke Elliott has been. It's a win for the defense. So you got to give the ball to Tony Pollard, but can Tony Pollard be effective? The one way the 49ers were a little, not necessarily limited, but they saw some issues last week where the angles that they could have taken in the outside zone. You saw Dre Greenlaw miss on one with the touchdown, but it doesn't happen that often. So you need to, the Cowboys need to capitalize on those opportunities. Tony Pollard provides them. I like that. And that's for Jaron Kearse. I mean, he's a guy who really just does everything for them out of that safety position. He's really valuable to that defense. And yeah, I think his availability is going to be important because it doesn't seem like he's going to be 100% if he plays. He said he will play, but if he plays, doesn't know if he's going to be 100%, and that might change the outcome of that game.
I think Schultz is one to watch as well. I mean, he's really come on this year. Big boy. Yeah. I mean, he's, so he's a guy that just naturally he could impose his will physically, throw it up to him, you get him in a one-on-one matchup. I mean, it doesn't really matter who's on him. He's going to be the bigger man. So I think he's a guy to watch out for. And they like to hit. I mean, get him in those seam routes, hit him up the seam. He's a guy that also could kind of help break things open with a big 20-yard gain up the seam and get that offense going. So I think Schultz is a guy to look out for as well.
I like it because the combination of Schultz and Lamb in the slot and then in the inline tight end position, you're going to force those safeties and linebackers to cover a little more. Jimmy Ward will obviously be there, but you've got to now Schultz on a Fred Warner, or if they play zone more likely, or some more cover three, you're going to have to fill in those gaps where Schultz and CD Lamb are with if they're lined up together. And so, yeah, that's going to be important. And Schultz had a huge game. He's had multiple touchdown games. He's a red zone threat. And the 49ers, that's one place which is going to be vital. If you can turn touchdowns into field goals, that saves you 4 points in a crucial moment.
Yeah, and that's the way I look at it. I mean, if the 49ers are in a cover three, I mean, you run two guys up the seam, who are you choosing? That's what it comes down to. If they're in a cover four, which they also like to run an awful lot, or show a two deep shell, use those guys as decoys and then let Pollard get loose the way that the 49ers do with CMC. And if those linebackers carry far enough, then it's like, all right, we'll just dump it off to Pollard and see if he can make somebody miss and make something happen. So, listen, this defense is not flawless. The 49ers defense is very good, but every defense has weaknesses. And I do think that Dallas has the horses to exploit them if they do it properly.
I agree.